Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us in our second of a very exciting series of Lunch and Learn sessions. We're so delighted you're giving up your time to be with us, and we hope you have planned a wonderful lunch. As you feed your bodies, we hope to feed your mind with great information on the state of education in Arizona, and hear from leaders who are on the front lines fighting for public education in Arizona and the support the league gives to them and their work and to our own work in the area of education issues advocacy. My name is Penny Sharon. I'm the League of Women Voters of Arizona State President. And today on the call, hopefully, is our League of Women Voters of Arizona State Advocacy Chair. Voters celebrates its 103rd year this week on February 14th. So we're so excited to host this work that is representative of more than 100 years of advocacies on issues that matter deeply to the league members. I would like to also frame my statements in this context. The league has a presence in over 8 to 10 of the counties of this state. We are not just in Maricopa County or Pima, which are certainly the largest counties. We are in Coconino, Cochise, Pinal. We even have a few members in the La Paz County. We have members in the Navajo who live actually in the Navajo County. So I say that to you all because recently we've been asked, where are your members? Our members are across the state, and they bring to this conversation issues. They bring to this conversation strong advocacy and presence to educate the voters. I also want to elevate the reason we are having this Lunch and Learn. Every year, the league hosts a legislative week. And during that week, in the past, we've generally had a one day at the Capitol. Several years ago, we decided we need to provide many more to mobilize our members to lobby and to be individual advocates, if you will, for the issues that the league cares about, that they have contributed to as league members. That being said, I want to share how important it is that this league work happens because we have amazing leaders at local leagues who are stepping up to provide leadership on different issues. Today, we are beyond fortunate. We are truly blessed to have Tina Mollica and Karen Devine from the League of Women Voters of Northwest Maricopa County, who are taking the leadership, who are providing leadership in different ways to the education, to the advocacy education issue team. So I thank you, Tina and Karen, and I am going to turn the program over to Karen and Tina.
Thank you so much, Penny. And as Penny mentioned, we lead the education issue team under the advocacy committee. And I spent my career working for the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, primarily in government affairs before retiring in Arizona. And Tina, can you share?
Yes, I am Tina Mollica, and I am a former educator in Illinois and a parent of 2 students here in public schools in Surprise.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Tina. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And today we have 3 esteemed presenters, and our focus is education legislation. Our first presenter will be Beth Lewis, Executive Director of Save Our Schools, Arizona. And then our second presenter will be Senator Christine Marsh, Legislative District 4, and she serves on the Senate Education Committee. And our third presenter will be Rachel Clausen, Organizing and Digital Director with Save Our Schools, Arizona. And we can advance the slide.
Oh, no, leave this one up.
Oh, yes, Tina.
Just to go over a few tips with you guys for today, please keep your microphone muted and post any questions that you have in the chat. I will be going through them and asking the guest speakers questions through the chat feature. Any unanswered questions, we are, crunched on time. So time permitting, we will give each of the speakers some time to answer those questions, and whatever we don't get answered, we will do our best to get answers and share them with anyone who is registered with the event. Our email is here if you have questions and want to contact us, and also the session is being recorded so you can watch it on our YouTube channel.
Thank you, Tina. And now it's time to introduce our first presenter, Beth Lewis, Executive Director, Save Our Schools. Beth is a mom, public education advocate, and a K-12 policy expert who works to bring parents, educators, elected officials, business leaders, and community members together in support of Arizona's public schools. She holds a master's degree in education from ASU and taught for 12 years in Arizona's public schools. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Beth.
Yeah. Do you want to go off mute?
Yeah. We're off mute.
Oh, hi, everybody. Sorry, Rachel and I are together. We are actually presenting together. We are two members of Save Our Schools Arizona. I'm the director.
And
Rachel.
yeah, hi, I'm the organizing and digital director for Save Our Schools Arizona, and happy to be here with you guys.
Rachel is also a public school parent and educator. How many years?
6 years. Yeah, I taught social studies in Tempe.
Karen, I sent you the slides, or you could make me a co-host so we could share them. Either way, whatever works.
Okay.
You don't need to be a co-host. You have privilege to share the screen.
Perfect. Thank you, Kimmy.
Okay, you're welcome.
Oh, it's so good to be here with everybody. It's been a while since I've been teaching online. Remember those days. So here is our brand new roadshow. We are so excited. We're going to split it in half so that Senator Marsh can come in and present in the middle. So we'll try and keep on track. For those of you that aren't familiar with us, we are Save Our Schools Arizona. We are a nonpartisan community-based organization fighting for strong public schools for a strong Arizona. And there's our website at the bottom, and I'll try and put some links in throughout to keep you updated.
So why we fight, and I know that many of you understand this very well, but at the heart of everything we do, we believe that every child deserves a quality, well-resourced classroom in their neighborhood. Public schools are the heart of our community. They provide so much more than academics. We know that schools raise property values, they improve our economy, they help businesses recruit a well-educated workforce, which we know is an issue. And we know that people in business care about those things. Dollar for dollar, public schools are by far the best investment Arizona can make in our economic future. And so we know that public schools, having strong public schools means that we have a strong Arizona.
That's no secret to anybody here that, unfortunately, our public schools are under attack here in Arizona. They've been under attack for quite some time. There are a lot of powerful special interests and games being played at the expense of our students. And so this is really why we fight and why we have to fight. We wish we didn't have to, but here we are. So we wanted to give you a few updates about just where we are in terms of education funding and rankings, because they change every year. And also because, some groups put out some really bad math that isn't grounded in reality. So here are some facts.
Overwhelmingly, we know that Arizona families choose public schools. If we want to talk about school choice, that is the choice of families across the state. 72% of those being district public schools and 20% of those being charter schools, which are still publicly funded schools. And that's something that we often have to reiterate to folks. We have 5% going to private schools and 3% going to homeschools. As a parent in Mesa, I've got 3 young kids. One's going into kindergarten next year, and one's going into preschool next year, and one's going into 5th grade. And there is no other school in our area that I would want to send my kids to than our public school, which means that as a parent, I'm here fighting for my kids' education for the school that we choose to send them to.
And with the advent of universal e-save vouchers, which we will certainly get into, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there as to how many people are actually utilizing the program and how many kids are being stripped of resources. And so we really need to keep pointing out to the public that 92% of our families choose these local public schools, publicly funded schools, and that private school and homeschool are very small subsets of the population. These are sort of a rundown of the different types of schools. It's good to sort of be, on the up and up with these. So district schools, as most of you know, they're local community schools. They're publicly funded. They have a locally elected school board. They're legally required to open up finances to the public. We know exactly how dollars are being spent. They provide services to every student, special education services, ELL services. With charter schools, they're also publicly funded. They are privately operated. They are accountable to a charter board, so not to a locally elected board, but to a state charter board. Some charter schools provide special education and ELL services. They're supposed to, but sometimes those are less robust. And there are some other wraparound services that aren't provided, like transportation, for example. We've got micro schools, which have been around in Arizona for a while, but really sort of blossomed or ballooned under the pandemic. And those are really unregulated, tiny little schools that can be propped up in churches, private homes, libraries, and those are funded in a weird way. Sometimes they're funded through charter funding, and sometimes they're funded through voucher funding. They're not accountable in any way. There's no safety checks. There's no background checks. There's no mandated curriculum. It's just kind of the wild, wild west. And they do not have to serve special education or ELL students, particularly if they're funded by vouchers. And then we've got private schools, which obviously are funded by vouchers at this point. They're propped up by quite a bit of state money, which we will get into. But they are not accountable in any way, shape, or form. They do not have to open up their books, even if they receive taxpayer dollars. They do not have to explain what they're teaching, how they're teaching it, whether their teachers have credentials, whether their teachers have fingerprint checks or background checks or any sort of safety mechanisms. There's zero obligation to serve special education students or English language learners. And some websites actually state that they do not serve 504s or IEPs, and they never will. Some schools just sort of glean those students out through the enrollment process. So, and then we've got homeschools, which obviously are not accountable to anybody because they happen in the home. But at this point, under universal ESAs, they're being funded via state taxpayer dollars, and it's basically like a debit card where families can use vouchers to fund whatever they wish, whether it's bounce houses or chicken coops or gourmet espresso machines. As long as it's sold as educational, then it is accepted, and there are no curriculum requirements. So over the last 25 years, our public education system has really morphed into something that I think if you were coming from another country with a robust public education system or another state, you'd walk into this and say, oh my gosh, what's happened? And we're all kind of boiled frogs at this point, and we're used to it.
One thing that people I think are maybe not necessarily as aware of is that when it comes to funding of education, folks will say, well, 40–50% of our budget goes towards education. Sure, that is true. However, that revenue continues to shrink that the state brings in. So absolutely the heart of our issue is that we have a revenue problem. We continue to cut taxes for the wealthy and for major corporations. We have the most regressive tax tax structure here in the United States. And so as a result, yes, it may seem percentage-wise that we're giving a lot of funding to education, but when you look at the size of the pie is much smaller in comparison to states across the country, including our nearby states that have very similar demographics and populations that we do.
And if you look back to 2008 and you see that like stagnation there, it's really important to note that the state was not meeting its requirement for 2% inflation matches at that time. So if you go back and you reallocate inflation, it would be adjusted to exactly where we are now. So we had to fight tooth and nail from 2017, where that star is, to get to just the bare minimum that was required to meet inflation from 2008.
And as far as per pupil funding is concerned, and there's a lot of different ways that folks try to calculate this, but US Census Bureau just released that Arizona is 47th in the nation in regards to per student spending. So there's a couple things that we want to make sure that people are understanding. First of all, despite the fact that we've made all these investments in education, we're still 47th in the nation, right? So despite that, we're still at the bottom of the barrel, which means that we have a long way to go before we can say adequately that our schools are funded. In addition, just because we are funded 47th in the nation doesn't necessarily mean that our academics are at the bottom of the barrel. And we'll get to that in a minute. But in fact, we do have a quite average across the nation test scores. So despite the fact that we're funded so lowly, our teachers and educators and staff are doing immeasurable things with what they have to help educate our students here.
And a lot of people ask us, well, if you're giving 50% of the budget away, what more do you want? Rachel kind of alluded to that. And what's wrong with Arizona if we're always at the bottom of the barrel? And a primary answer to that is the fact that we're taking in, a lot of money, but we're giving a lot of it right back, right? Via tax credits, tax cuts, and expenditures. And so the Department of Revenue puts out a report of those total expenditures every year. And it has ballooned. I mean, we're talking $24.5 billion a year it's grown to in the last 10 years. And that was, through a dedicated assault by the Republican-led legislature and by Governor Ducey. And so now we really don't have enough money in our general fund to fund everything that's needed for the people of this state. The general fund really needs to cover K-12 public schools, but also roads, healthcare, prisons, all sorts of things that really help real people. And the answer at the legislature right now just seems to be tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. And this is just going to double down on the problem. We don't have enough money in our pockets to cover our bills, and they keep trying to shrink our base.
So I know we're coming short on time, but I'm sure many of you are well aware of the impacts of chronic underfunding. As a teacher in the classroom, I would often share with voters in the field how I would have 38 students in my honors US history classrooms. So to the point where I did have at a time have kids who didn't have desks. And so it's absolutely critical that we shrink those classroom sizes to really lower the workload that's on our teachers' backs so that they can give better one-on-one attention. And I'll let you read through the rest of this. And was there anything, Beth, that you wanted to highlight before we move on?
No, I mean, I think it's just looking at the human impact. People like to say, you can't throw money at the problem. Yes, you can. And you're all the way that money would absolutely help our children, which is the best investment. So that I will stop sharing so that Senator Marsh can come in.
Thank you. Thank you for a very informative presentation, Beth and Rachel, and they will be back after we hear from Senator Marsh. We are now joined by Senator Christine Marsh. Senator Marsh serves on the Arizona State Senate Committee on Education, among other Senate committees. She grew up in the legislative district. She has represented since 2021. She has a master's degree in education administration and is in her 29th year of teaching, and in 2016 was named Arizona Teacher of the Year. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I'm unfortunately going to have to make this even quicker than I thought because we are still in caucus, but I dashed up because I wanted to say hi to you all. We are hoping, I'll do the big education news that's happening right now. We are going to be, I believe, keep our fingers crossed, lifting the AEL, at least getting that through the Senate today in about an hour. And that is very exciting that we aren't going as close to the March 1st deadline as we could be going. A little bit disappointing that it's come to this at all, because this was part of, lifting a special session to lift the AEL was part of budget negotiations. So that part's disappointing, but I am very excited that we are hopefully going to be getting this done today. And I can answer quick questions, but as I said, we're in caucus and I do have to get back down. Unfortunately, it's thrown off the whole day. It was supposed to end at 11:30 and here it is rolling in on 12:30. And we still had, I believe, I don't know, 2 pages left of 6 to go through. So.
Well, we completely understand that. And we're so grateful that you took the time to meet with us. And does anyone have a quick question they would like to ask the senator before she departs?
I don't see any in the chat right now, so if someone has one, drop it in there. I do have a quick question for you until somebody puts something in there. What are your feelings? How do you feel about getting a permanent solution to the AEL? Where do you think that's going?
I think that is probably not going to happen. I mean, I have a little teeny sliver of hope that it could, but I don't think it's very likely. I'm just grateful we're going to actually get the 1-year fix through, at least a couple of weeks before the deadline. Who knows though? Here's what I think. I think that as the session goes on and as we get further and further and both parties are forced to start working across the aisle, that maybe there is, as I said, a sliver of hope later in the session. But unfortunately, there were a number of bills. I mean, I dropped one. I dropped a, semi-permanent fix and then a permanent fix. So did Representative Cook in the House. He dropped a bill for a permanent fix, but so far, none of those have seen the light of day. So
thank you.
Well, we thank you so much for that. And thank you for all you do for public education. Again, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so sorry about, that I'm only able to stay on for a couple of minutes. But this is what it is. Welcome to the Senate. This is how it is down here. So all right, I'm going to sign back off and get back down to caucus, but thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to take a moment to share Rachel Clausen's bio. I should have done that in the beginning. For some reason, I was thinking I was going to share it after the senator spoke. So let me share this. Rachel Clausen has a master's degree in secondary education and taught history and government at her alma mater, Arizona State University, when she discovered her passion for education advocacy. Today, Rachel coordinates advocacy efforts in the Valley. Thank you for joining us, both Rachel and Beth. And now we'd like to hear more from both of you.
Thanks so much, Karen.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And we're very excited about the news coming out of the Senate. It's moving forward, so that's good. So we divvied this into kind of 2 parts. The second part of our presentation is more focused on privatization, vouchers, and letting you know what's going on. It's not good news but I think it's really important that we're all up to speed so that we can go out in our communities and explain the dangers of what the legislature passed last year so that we can roll this back, because it is devastating our state. I think most folks in the room probably know the incrementalist approach that lawmakers and mostly special interests have taken. I mean, at this point, Betsy DeVos and the American Federation for Children have spent, billions in Arizona to buy universal vouchers. So we started back in 1998 with the first tax credit vouchers. Those are now popping up all over the country. And they hold Arizona up as a model, but the reality is it has not been good for our state. 2009, Arizona courts ruled vouchers in general as unconstitutional because they took public dollars and gave them to private religious schools, which violated the separation of church and state. So special interests came back and passed a workaround called an ESA, which is an empowerment scholarship account, which is a deceptive term for voucher. That money goes directly to parents. We'll talk about it more in detail. And then, for years, the legislature has expanded ESA vouchers to new groups of students, typically sort of sympathetic groups such as special needs students, youth in foster care, students on reservation lands, kind of under the guise of, these students need help, they need to leave their failing schools. In 2018, you'll remember with Prop 305, the Arizona voters overwhelmingly rejected universal vouchers by a 2-to-1 margin, but the legislature did not care. Governor Ducey did not care. I think they saw the writing on the wall that they might lose either a chamber or the governor's seat and would not have the power to ram through universal vouchers. So they took their last window on the last day of legislative session last year, rammed it through, stripped all accountability out, and now we have become the first state in the nation with universal vouchers. And it is unrolling basically as predicted. These can be used for private school and homeschool expenses. A lot of people don't know that they also can be rolled over year to year and used for university and community college tuition. So while our public school teachers are paid in crumbs and have a tremendous difficulty funding college for their students, and all of us public school parents have the same difficulties. If you exit the public program, you can save up and send your kid to Stanford with Arizona taxpayer dollars. It's wild. Rachel, do you want to go through?
Yeah. So as Beth was talking about how this has really been an incremental game, that slowly, the legislature propped open the door and then every session attempted to open it wider and wider. And, when we were in committee listening to some of these bills that were very incrementally trying to do this, we'd often hear, well, this is just for 10 students. We're just doing this for a handful of students. But we knew that the end goal would eventually be universal vouchers aimed at everyone. And so we see 2022, just under 200 million being spent per year on vouchers, which has hugely ballooned in the few short months that it has been available. 80% of those students not coming from the public school system. And so there's projections from the Joint Legislative Budget Committee that we're going to be reaching 600 million by next year. So it's just wild how quickly this has grown. But we know and are seeing proof of this is not going towards the students they claimed that it would be going towards.
Oops, sorry. So this red space shows those unbudgeted costs. It's $200 million this year that the legislature failed to budget for, which the JLBC director has said that was completely unheard of. He's never seen a legislative body do anything like this, and he's been around for decades. They're projecting that those unbudgeted costs will grow to $376 million in additional costs next year. That is next school year. This isn't like phased out over many years. That's just next year. And there are a couple of reasons why they're unbudgeted costs. Rachel alluded to the fact that 80% of the students are not leaving public schools. They've never been in public schools to start with. They've never had any money allocated to their child. Right? If you've exited the public system, none of those general fund costs were ever budgeted for your kid. That's sort of the deal. When you decide that you're not part of the public system, they stop budgeting for your child. So now when a family who never was in public school takes that money, the $7,000, unfortunately, it is a direct subtraction from another child who is in the public school and has been in the public school. I view this as a moral issue, and we really need to get people to understand what this subtraction means for the kids in public schools. I'm just going to skip this and focus on ESAs for today because it's just such a fraught issue.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we've been hearing this term school choice for a long time now, which school choice really just equates to vouchers. Private schools do not have to accept vouchers. They do not have to accept voucher students. So if a student takes out a voucher, they want to go to a certain private school does not have to accept them. It is the school's choice. It's not the parent's choice. Private schools serve significantly fewer students of color than public schools, and ESAs rarely cover the full cost of attending a private school. Low-income families are often unable to make up the gap. So when it comes to this school choice and needing to make universal vouchers so appealing, I mean, we've seen over time the simultaneous incremental increase of vouchers, and at the same time, we've seen the media led by those in the right and the privatization efforts essentially attacking our public school systems in a myriad of ways, right? Which includes what's included CRT and the likes of saying public schools are terrible, they're failing, they're teaching this or that, which, as we know, CRT is non-existent in our K-12 public school system. And so the attacking of public schools happening at the same time of the incremental voucher system to try to drive students away from our public school system based on lies. However, those voucher students, many of those kids don't know that they're not protected by laws that protect them in the public school system, which includes LGBTQ+ students, special education students, or English language learners. Story just broke yesterday of a couple of dads that tried to go onto campus to see their daughter, which is where their mother had enrolled their daughter at this private school, and the dads were essentially harassed and threatened for being on campus, and were told by this private school that if they had known that her father was gay, they would not have accepted her. And so it's real and it's happening. It's not as though this is just something that we anticipate that could happen. It is actually happening. Schools are saying out loud they will not take special education students. They will not take students or staff that don't sign off on beliefs, an affirmation of beliefs that a marriage is between a man and a woman. This is actually happening, and taxpayers are funding it.
Do you want to, I can't because I'm sharing slides. Would you be willing to drop the link to the Republic article from yesterday?
Yes, I'll do that.
I think it's definitely very telling.
Rachel, if you send it to me, drop it to me directly, I'll make it available to everyone. Thanks.
Perfect.
Thank you, Kenny. Yeah, I mean, we've seen folks like Charlie Kirk, who runs Turning Point, have opened up 2 schools in Arizona. Happens to be the same month that they passed universal vouchers. And here comes Charlie Kirk opening up a school. Like Rachel said, the statement of faith that students, teachers, and parents have to attest to says homosexual behavior is sinful. Marriage is between a man and a woman, and there are only 2 genders. And I mean, like Rachel said, it comes with the over-regulation of public schools. So they've put a microscope on our schools relentless attacks, but relentless regulation, and they want to shift all of these taxpayer dollars to completely unreasonable. We've covered some of this. I don't want to repeat anything, but I mean, it does speak to the fact that these private schools have no oversight and no transparency. So we don't know how many of our taxpayer dollars are going to which schools. There are 3,000 vendors that are currently listed. Many of them are just private home tutors, gymnastics classes. There's no fingerprinting required. There's no like safety checks or background checks. And we have no idea how this money is being spent. The curriculum can be hateful, racist curriculum. There's a lot of evangelical curriculum that teaches just plain wrong science and wrong history. I mean, you know, they call it a biblical history, but it is simply not rooted in fact. There's no mention of the Big Bang, you know, the earth is 2,000 years old. You know, it's a really poor education, and our taxpayer dollars are propping this up. There's no academic accountability. We don't know if kids are learning. And it's really important to know that there is no other state in the country that has vouchers of any sort that doesn't require academic testing. So we see testing coming out of states like Illinois, Florida, Ohio that are showing that voucher students are performing worse than public school students. We can't get that information in Arizona because there's no requirement that they take any sort of test. Say what you will about standardized testing. I mean, Rachel and I are teachers, we're not big fans, but you know, if you're going to spread around taxpayer dollars and try to make comparisons, we do need to know that kids are at least learning. And this fellow, Dr. Cohen from Michigan, he was like a lifelong supporter of vouchers. He worked really hard to pass vouchers. Then he's a professor, and he did a bunch of research, and he realized that looking at the test scores and looking at the kids who were actually benefiting, he realized that vouchers are completely destroyed student outcomes, devastating public education, and most kids are just better off in public schools. And that's what the data shows.
So yeah, what do we do about it? I think there are, hearing all of this, it can feel really overwhelming. It can feel like, oh gosh, well, might as well give up now, I guess. But that's absolutely the opposite of what we're here for, right? Universal vouchers, they do threaten to bankrupt the state. I know that there's a lot of questions about how do we talk to legislators about this issue in a way that will make them care. And absolutely the fact that universal vouchers are threatening to bankrupt the state is one of those big talking points. They understand that they did not budget for universal vouchers and that money has to come from somewhere, and it better not be coming from my kids' education. And so they understand that they have to find the money if they want to actually pay for this. And that is something that is well understood across party lines. And so hammering that home, that it's important to us that we budget funds for it and that it doesn't come from K-12 schools. 30,000 new universal ESA voucher students in 2022 represent an unbudgeted cost. So if you need some of those numbers when you're interacting with lawmakers, that's definitely helpful, growing to nearly 400 million in 2024, as we said. We also project that, or JLBC projects that we're going to have an economic downturn here in the next couple of years, which is going to be multiplied by the fact that Ducey passed the flat tax the year prior, which is going to further slash state revenues. So we're looking at a potentially really dangerous situation for our state revenue, which impacts all of the state services that we provide, but significantly it will hurt our public schools, who are now also being faced with this universal voucher drain. We need a long-term solution for the AEL spending cap. If we're able to get that lifted today for the year, that's great. We've avoided disaster for another year. However, we need a long-term solution. We don't want to keep doing this year after year after year. And we know that that's what is going to happen if that's the case. And lastly, we have propositions that were passed by the voters to increase state funding for K-12 schools. Those, including in Prop 123, those are set to expire, which will create even a larger gap for K-12 funding. So we are really at a precipice when it comes to our sources of revenue. And we can't be funding a system, an educational system that we don't budget for while we see these potential cuts coming down the pipeline for our students in K-12 schools, which, as we said, 92% of Arizona families choose. Penny pinged me here and asked about, how do we persuade legislators? And we actually had every week with SOS, we have our education advocacy mini sessions at 6:30 on Mondays. And yesterday we talked a little bit about messaging and finding those things that people can relate to. People understand budgets. They understand what it means to try to live outside of our means, and that our state government should not be doing that. We should not be dipping into other services to fund something we didn't budget for. So I think that is a really big selling point to our legislators, as well as the accountability pieces that if we are paying for something from our state government, then we should know if it actually works. We should know if kids are actually benefiting from these systems.
Well, and our lawmakers understand that they have, the Republicans have a razor thin margin, and they know that they lost statewide races. What they respond to best is actually not persuasion. They know the program's bad. Behind closed doors, they'll tell me they know the program's bad. Rural lawmakers admit that it does not benefit their constituents. So what we really need is a huge public outcry. It's really volume more than persuasion. It's really, wow, I just heard from 100 people in my LD that they do not like vouchers. I'm starting to get squeezed by my people. That's the only thing they respond to. And we have, I'll send it to Penny, but we have a one-click email that you could send like right now. It takes 2 seconds. And I'll just beg you, our lawmakers really, really need to hear from us.
Beth, can either you or Rachel send me that click and I'll put it in the chat immediately.
Yep, doing it right now. Oh, you did. Okay. Beth got to it first.
Yeah. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, so we have a lot of long-term plans, but and I know we'll do Q&A. A lot of people ask us, well, can we just get signatures? Can we just, and I think right now we have the courts we have, and 2024 is going to be a critical year. For us, we do a lot of electoral work. We really need to make sure that we have a pro-public education legislature. We're going to have the governor. We are working closely with the governor's office to make sure that they know which bills we're prioritizing. And there are actually 5 ESA accountability bills that are on the table, along with universal repeal, that the governor's office is supportive of. And so those are some of them are listed out in the link that Penny just shared. So if you can tell your lawmakers that you support those fixes, it's a really reasonably worded letter. It's nonpartisan. And it's not branded to us. It just simply says, hey, I'm your constituent. I'm worried about these unbudgeted costs. I really want my local public schools to be prioritized. And I think that our taxpayer dollars should be accounted for. So I think that would go a long, long way, because these bills are probably not going to see the light of day in the next couple of weeks, but they can and will be part of the budget process.
Yeah, absolutely. So supporting those pro-public education lawmakers when they put forth these accountability bills, and because they're going to face the heat in terms of the privatization efforts. In addition, reaching out to lawmakers who are maybe in the middle or on the right to say that, yes, cost is important, right? And that's something that as a taxpayer, I'm concerned with. But also I love my public school. Emphasizing how much we support and care about our public schools and why is going to go a long way, because so much of what is being heard, whether that's at school board meetings or in committee or in emails, they'll hear that public schools did this or that and that they're terrible and there's no accountability and parental rights. And the truth is that like we said, 92% of families choose public schools, and they do that because they love their public schools. And so really focusing on why we need public schools, why we support public schools, is changing the narrative as far as public schools are failing, that they're government schools. All of those things that our lawmakers sometimes recite on the floor, it's just not true. But they need the reminder that yes, we're here, we support our public schools. We need to ask for investments in public education moving forward. As we see, we're on this cliff in terms of various funding sources. We can't just sit stagnant and expect things to get better when we know that there are serious threats ahead of us. Capping growth of ESA and STO voucher schemes. They're actually, the original bill that was passed in 2017 in response to the universal vouchers had a cap on it. And even with that cap, voters said no. So the fact that this no longer has a cap, it's like, okay, can we at least cap it so it doesn't keep ballooning month to month as we're seeing it happen right now. Also requiring transparency and accountability for all schools receiving taxpayer dollars, which we've talked about at length. And then, as I said, celebrating our public schools. That's something that we're really focused on this year. You'll see that in our social media. We love to share about public schools that are doing great things, which is happening all over our state. But we're also seeing it in committee and with parents reaching out to their lawmakers saying those things. They're hearing the other side of it, and that's so crucial to us moving forward. All right, so you are invited to join us in our efforts. Yes, next Wednesday in particular, February 15th, we're going to be joining some coalition partners in having a Parents' Day at the Capitol. So that's going to begin at 11:30 and it will go to 1:30. We'll meet at the Wesley Boland Plaza, and we will be parents there in support of public schools. Of course, you don't necessarily need to be a parent, you can be a grandparent or just a member of the community, but we're really trying to shift the narrative on parents and that they support public schools. So you're welcome to join us, and we'll have some various trainings and things there as well.
Rachel, before you get off the topic, just to help us, sorry, Christina and Karen, just exercising a little bit of prerogative here because I don't want to miss this important piece, and that is, what are you seeing on the ground as we pull together all the parents to show support for public schools, the infamous Purple Parents group? Can you touch on that a little bit? Because I think it's important for us in our current climate to know who beyond Charlie Kirk, to know who some of these other players are.
It's interesting because they become sort of disorganized because there's sort of factions, right? So you've got the people who like to wear yellow, We Heart ESA shirts, and people who are, purple people who like the purple parents, but they have sort of radicalized. And so they've sort of splintered off a little bit. What we are tracking is at the school board level. There are vicious attacks on school board members. And it's interesting because when we go to those meetings, who's out there organizing but Turning Point USA? And they're handing out cards and saying, hey, are you unhappy with this school district? You should send your kid to Turning Point Academy. It's like, you're 30 minutes away from any Turning Point school. So we're kind of trying to assess that. I think that's a really good question. The people who are most active on our accounts are people who have received the ESA, who were homeschooling and private schooling before and are very upset that Governor Hobbs has threatened to repeal the program. Because let's face it, I mean, if they have 5 kids, they're getting $35,000 at their disposal. Taking that away from them is clearly taking quite a big fight. And I do worry that there will be organizing around those parents, but at the end of the day, we just need to get into our communities and focus on supporting public schools and lifting up people and reminding them that we do have to speak up. It's no longer like the default. It's no longer going to be that we just magically get to have a good public school in our neighborhood, because unfortunately, you know, as this program proliferates, we're going to see school closures. We're going to see teachers laid off. Like, public school eventually will not be the default. There will be consolidation efforts, and we're not going to have a great public school in every neighborhood. We simply can't under a voucher system.
Beth, I have a question for you. Speaking or tailing off of what Penny said, are you guys looking at Moms for Liberty? Are you aware of that group? That's an organization that has funded a ton of school board candidacies.
Yes. Yep. They're on the list. What are the others? There's so many.
Yeah, there's quite a few, but I think to your point, getting involved at the school board level, I think is absolutely critical to fighting against the narratives they try to spin about how our public schools are, you know, terrible, which we know isn't true. So getting involved there to counter the privatization narrative is really where it begins. Saying, you know, that we love what teachers do, and that's not to say that every teacher in every school is making all the right calls, but that there are systems in place that allow for that accountability and transparency that is not available outside the public school system. So I think getting involved at that school board level, attending the meetings, getting to know your school board members. I love that I can email my school board members and they actually respond. They're like one of the only elected officials that I can reach out to who are going to respond to my concerns as a parent and a constituent in the community. And having those relationships, what's really crucial about that is those school board members will then communicate to you about things that are potentially coming down the pipeline that the school board is going to address. And so having those partnerships, those relationships with school board members that support our public schools, because why did we elect school board members that don't support our public schools is a great question. And we unfortunately are seeing some of the negative effects of that in some school districts around the state.
We have just a few minutes. Karen and Christina, if I can pull this thread a little bit further, because this provides tremendous activism for our league members. You know, we have league members in communities that make that need the support. And where I'm going with this is that, you know, when you say get involved in local boards, often, you know, some of us internalize it as, oh, I can't run for that board. I don't have time, and or I don't have kids in the school. But what would be helpful is do you think having not just a presence, but actually speaking out when we talk about constituents, are constituents just the parents of that, you know, kids in the school, are really the community? So framing that for members like ours, many of myself, for example, the kids are way past public schools, you know, even grandkids are getting way past public schools, but we live in these communities because they had our generations benefited from it, you know. So I just, you don't have to answer it, but if you could think about that, then a group like ours that have energized and mobilized members who, you know, aren't raising kids at this time can do some serious work.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that we're doing is Save Our Schools. We have our various regional teams and they organize around having people attend school board meetings. And a lot of those folks don't have kids in that school system, but they understand the greater impact that having a great school board and a great public school system in their community, what that does to the economy and to the local economy and to local safety, and just a sense of community. I mean, I'm one of the lucky ones because my 4th grade daughter, she walks outside and she meets up with her friends that all live on our street, and they take the bus, which stops literally right outside my house. And I know that that is not how it is for so many people. And just the fact that we have that community in our neighborhood is something that I value extremely. And so it doesn't have to be, it's not just about parents. And that is something, you're absolutely right. We hear that at doors. Someone says, I don't have a kid in the school system. It's like, well, these things still affect you and the community in which you live. And so getting involved in school boards, speaking at school boards, whether you're a parent or not, but just as somebody who supports the community, I think is really, really important.
Rachel, if I can, and Beth, if I can add to a little bit to that, we're at whatever district you live in, your school board agendas are posted online before the meeting, and there's always an opportunity to give public comment. We have here at Dysart, we have people who do not have children in the schools who give their public comment frequently. And every district in the state could use people like you who care about public education and want quality public schools in their neighborhood to look at these agendas, see what's on them, and speak in public comment, because many of them are only hearing the voice of the minority who want to privatize and think that public education is terrible. And we need more people speaking out in these meetings and telling them, no, we want public schools.
Absolutely.
They are for every child.
And one thing I'll add before we wrap up, that is different this year than in years past. And the significance of having Governor Hobbs in office cannot be overstated. Because this time last year, when we saw all of these bills that sought to attack teachers, sought to change curriculum, all of those things, the threat was real. The threat was very, very real. And we knew that coming out of the legislative session last year, that some of these bills attacking curriculum and attacking teachers in the classroom, that they could and very well and were passed. We can rest a little bit easier now because we have Governor Hobbs in our corner. And as we like to say here, she's our goalie. So a lot of the bills that focus on some of just this nonsense, distractions, culture wars, we know that Senator Hobbs, excuse me, she was in the Senate when I first met her. Governor Hobbs, that she's on our side and she knows that this is not going to fly. In fact, we actually gave her a special veto pen from us because we look forward to the opportunities she has to veto some of this nonsense that will come out of the legislature. So it is nice that we can breathe a little bit easier on some of those things so that we can spend our time on things that we know are going to make a huge difference moving forward. And that is bills that hold the ESA voucher program accountable, focusing our efforts on the local school boards because they have such a direct impact on our communities. And doing those things, I have to say, I actually really love that I don't have to spend days at the Capitol watching legislators talk about unreal issues and talking badly about teachers all the time. It makes life a lot better. And so we're really at an extremely exciting time to be involved in education advocacy. And we know that the League has always been such a wonderful partner to us. And so we just really appreciate all of your support and the various issues and things that we fight for, because we're all in this together. And that's the only way we're going to make change in the state.
So we are at 1. We do have a couple of questions. So Penny, do we have a few minutes to answer a couple of them, or do we need to?
No, it's your call. You know, if our wonderful guests, our presenters are available, we should stay on. We have not lost everybody. We've lost only a couple of people. So there might be an interest in the questions being answered.
Rachel and Beth, are you up for it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I just have a couple here. There was a couple things about vouchers, two questions that I'm going to throw at you. One person asked, why are vouchers so popular if only 5% of the population is enrolled? I think many of us might know that answer, but it's a good one to cover. And then somebody else asked, has anyone ever been turned down, which led me to think, what access do we have to data about who's getting these vouchers, other than the fact that, 80% don't attend a public school?
Yeah, those are great questions. First of all, the homeschool and private school combined would be about 8% of our student population, and that is about 85,000 students. So if you multiply that out by $7,000, you see how costly that would be to our state. I mean, I think that they are popular in concept. I will say that we're getting a lot of reports of people who signed their kid up for it. Maybe they'd been homeschooling, but they filled out the paperwork to get the money. And they're now saying, oh my gosh, this system is such a nightmare. I don't want to use my personal credit card to buy things on Amazon and pay tutors via Venmo or Zelle and then wait for 3 months to get reimbursements from the ADE. And I think a lot of people are finding the program pretty untenable. And part of that is because it's grown by 400%. Part of it is because Tom Horn is running it. Part of it is because, that's like a giant school district, 44,000 kids, and they don't know how to run it. It turns out administering a school district of 44,000 students is actually pretty hard. And you need amazing people with PhDs and executive experience, like superintendents that you hire. And you need a school board to run it, and you need, great principals. And I think they're starting to find out that this whole schooling thing is a little harder than what they anticipated. So let's see, I went off on a tangent there, but I think, we're seeing the popularity. It'll be interesting to see how those numbers change over time. Bottom line, public schools are really popular. It's just, we don't hear about it as much because it is the default. Yeah, of course I choose public schools. So, and the other side is weaponized words. They're, the words that they use, like school choice, it's really hard to argue against, but it's really important to be able to fight back and say, yeah, but it's the school doing the choosing. That's not really school choice. Your question about data and transparency and following the child is pretty complex. I will keep it simple to say we really don't know. One of the bills that Senator Marsh has proposed that we are supporting, which is in the email to lawmakers that I put in the chat, asks for more information. So it lets us know how many kids are exiting in and out of the program and whether that funding was returned to the state or whether it was not. In most cases, there's no real mechanism. If a child leaves a local school and goes to private school, pays the tuition, and then says, this school is not for me, or gets kicked out of the school because they find out that your dads are gay, that money does not follow you back. It does not come back to the public school. There really is no way until the next year for your person to be budgeted for.
And if I can play devil's advocate to that initial question, why are the legislators so in love with the voucher system? Because they keep passing it.
There are very powerful special interests that are, pushing all of this. American Federation for Children, which is, Betsy DeVos's group, spent $570,000 on elections last year in Arizona. 100,000 of that is from the Walton Foundation, which is Walmart.
Yeah.
And these folks they want Christian nationalism. That is the end goal, and vouchers get them there. I mean, think about an indoctrinated voter base in schools like Charlie Kirk's and how that changes the fabric of America in 15 years. It's terrifying.
Just wanted to remind everyone. The last question I have is, we were talking about the AEL, which if anybody doesn't know, that's the aggregate expenditure limit that Senator Marsh was talking about, being hopeful that it would be waived. Do you guys, or do you know any groups who have plans, or is it even possible for us to start a campaign to like a ballot initiative to find a permanent solution or to repeal it?
I know that, I think that there are some groups that are being convened right now to start those discussions. I think that there are some very interesting predictions about whether putting it on the ballot is the right route for 2024. So I don't know if I have any answers for that. I was hoping to get something out of the legislature because that would be easier. And there are other fixes that they need to do right, like the fact that they didn't exempt Prop 301 funds in 2019 when they re-upped Prop 301, that's a huge hit. So there are things that they could do legislatively that they're just choosing not to do, like resetting the base. So I don't really have an answer there, except I don't think anybody's rushing out to get signatures right now. It would probably be after next legislative session, if at all, because, you know, you give them another opportunity before you spend so much money and time trying to get it on the ballot.
Thank you both.
Christina, Tina, do you have any more questions?
We do not. I don't see any here.
I have two more questions that popped up. You know, they're writing to me directly, so I want to be sure we don't lose those. One is Rachel's going to send me the email about the Wednesday event at the Capitol. Anticipate seeing it posted in our Sunday call to action, which is where we send out every Sunday what we plan on, what we are monitoring and recommendations for RTS. So can you verbally repeat again, just in case people don't read our weekly?
Sure. Yeah, so we're going to be working together with some partners in a Parents' Day at the Capitol. But as we said, absolutely anybody who supports our schools is welcome. It's next Wednesday, February 15th at 11:30 a.m. And we are going to be meeting in the Wesley Bolin Plaza. So that's at the Capitol near the memorials and everything. And we, at this point, we are going with the intent to share with lawmakers why we need to address and fix the AEL. Of course, if that changes between now and then, we'll still be going and maybe thanking lawmakers for doing their due diligence on that. So I will send the information over to Penny, and I want to throw this out there too. We have brand new shirts coming in, and anybody who registers for our event next week is going to get a brand new Arizona Hearts Public Schools shirt, and it's actually blue. So it's another thing to be excited about if you're able to join us.
Will there be a car magnet? I need to replace my car magnet. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so
there actually is. We have car magnets coming, new shirts as well. And is there anything else? I couldn't quite remember. Yard signs, that's right. If you come to the event on at the Capitol, we'll also have yard signs as well. If you're able to put those up in your yard or in your window that says Arizona Hearts Public Schools.
The other question, Tina, would be on the let's see. They're flowing a little bit faster than I anticipated.
Yeah, I'm not getting them, sorry.
Yeah, so what happens is if they send it to me directly, then I don't, you don't see it. But anyway, okay, thank you. All right.
Penny, I just sent you the sign up. I know Rachel's emailing it to you, but I think the sign up is in the chat too.
Oh, let me do that. So I'll post it in the chat for everyone so everyone has it. Okay.
And then you can see the logo for the shirt and the yard sign too, which is, I think these yard signs are going to be amazing. Kind of publicly showing your love for public schools.
Yeah.
And we can get them on our Facebook pages too, Penny. We can share the Facebook event on our
Right,
page.
right. But we want it to be statewide, Christina, just not Northwest Maricopa. So we don't, so that's why I asked you that info so I can send it out, you know. All right, thank you, ladies. Okay, appreciate it. Okay, Karen and Tina, I don't know where you are going with the event further.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions for now, I can close us. Rachel and Beth, thank you for a wonderful presentation. It was very informative. And we learned a lot about the state of education in Arizona, about unbudgeted, unaccountable voucher expansion, and about the harsh reality of school choice, and how we can communicate to our lawmakers in a meaningful way. So we thank you for that. And also thank you for sharing about your event on Wednesday, February 15th at 11:30 a.m. We'll make sure we share that with our members. We all hope to join you. And we again want to thank you for this wonderful presentation and thank all the participants for joining us today. Thank you, Penny and
Thank you
Christine.
both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Bye, everyone.